Benjamin Franklin once said, "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." The fact is, quality matters. Join us as we make quality fun, interesting, and accessible to companies of all levels. Quality Matters is a must-listen for all things quality. Listen in, ask questions, and get back to doing what matters most. Quality Matters, brought to you by Texas Quality Assurance, where quality management gets simplified.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Quality Matters podcast. I am Kyle Chambers with Texas Quality Assurance, and today we're going to be having Caleb from TQA join us again, and we're having another guest on here, Connor O'Boyle. He's been with us before, someone we've known for a number of years now. Really fantastic guy, and is just an absolute wealth of knowledge when it comes to building, maintaining, implementing training solutions, because that kind of is and has been his life for a long time. So let me welcome everyone in here. Caleb, Connor, say hi in the world.
Hey.
All right.
Hello. Thank you, Kyle and Caleb, for having me on again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. So we're talking about training, but everyone needs a little bit of background here. So Connor, for those of you that are watching on YouTube or whatever, you can see all the fun API certs in the background, but everyone listening on that in the car on their drive to work may not know about it. So Connor, what's up with all the certs on the back wall there?
Yeah, for sure. So thankfully we do have quite a nice collection of certificates and achievements up here, including even up there we have our plaque as well that we can award facilities now. It's kind of a new thing we got, but cool. So as Kyle alluded to here, been training for quite a bit, and thankfully I've been training for API. Well, part of APIU, the university of arm of API, as you can see. Oh, let me lean the right way here. Right there. But yeah, these are our certificates for our 3 approved courses that we have already. Currently, we have a tubing and casing course dealing with obviously tubing and casing threaded connections. Then we have our rotary shouldered course dealing with the drill pipe end of it. And then we have what's called our combined course, which is actually both of them in back-to-back days combined, so that you can get, a dual certification as opposed to just one or the other.
Now, we get a lot of folks listening to this that have not a lick of experience with oil and gas. So what any of this mean? Briefly, just so that folks have a clue, like, oh, he trains on big words. Cool.
Right, pretty much. That is a benefit of my job, is I can make it sound really, really, really complicated. But at the end of the day, we try and break it down to be very simple for you, so it's fun. Yeah. So basically, what I train on is for the drill pipe section, meaning when you're actually physically drilling down. You see these wells out in West Texas or in the Permian Basin or these other places. They're drilling down for that big pool of black oil. It's going to make us all rich and provide us with a bunch of plastics and gas for our cars and all that good stuff as well. So we train people on measuring the thread elements, meaning the lead, the taper, the height, the addendum, the pitch diameter, ovality, things like this. Essentially, how do the two mating components or threads conform, get together? Even if, thankfully I have one right here, even if you think about an actual water bottle, these are threaded connections where as I screw this on, it creates a seal, which then keeps the cap on. So what I do is I train people to measure about 6 to 7 different aspects of those threads down to roughly 1/1000th of an inch or 1/10 of a 1,000th of an inch to ensure accuracy and make sure it all works correctly.
I tell you, I have been blown. Like, people think about threads. I mean, you hear threads. Me 15 years ago, I've been like, what's the deal? It's a freaking thread. Like, can't we have fewer threads? It's annoying that stuff doesn't match. But my gosh, we've got, you've worked with them as well. So we've got a client that, my gosh, I had no idea how many types of threads there are. Like, holy crap. There was one, and I'm not naming any names here because we've not gotten authorization to say anything or nothing, but not saying anything bad. It's just fantastic. Like, one thread, they've got 7 different licenses from different manufacturers or from different companies for them to make, and they have their own licensed thread. They can make the same thread 8 different licensed ways. Like, I had no idea such things existed.
Yeah, when I kind of jumped into the world, or I should say fell into the world of threading, back when I worked for GaugeMaker back in like 2016, I was the same way. I go, okay, I understand things kind of screw together. That makes sense. How many different variations can there be? And then as I got into it and realized there's literally hundreds of different threads, all depending on the application or the different dynamic load conditions it's going to feel, or different stresses, or XYZ. It just changes so frequently that it's insane.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I'm on the side and I'm pushing for the standardization of the measurement. And that's the big key in regards to training is we want everybody to use it the right way, and we want everybody to get the same number. And that always doesn't happen. So
now, Caleb, this is sounding a little similar kind of the world you come from, which folks may not always be aware. Like we talked about you doing the software development work, but maybe everyone doesn't realize you're actually a CWI. But the world of welding is similar too, because I remember having the same shock there. I remember growing up with my papa thinking, all right, we got stainless, we got carbon, and it don't get much than that.
Yeah.
Possibly more wrong.
And it's all interconnected too. I mean, with the different types of metals and that kind of thing, I'm sure that all spills over. And there's really no way to memorize everything, or, and it's almost bad to even do that because stuff changes so often. You always want to, as long as you have the most up-to-date reference, like, understand the basics. It's never a shame to go have to reference something.
So how how did you get started, I guess, in training professionally? I mean, I think that's something that and I'm by no means like, I'm trying to think how to say this. I'll probably ruffle a few feathers. There's no shortage of goobers online. I'm probably one of them that think that they're trainers because they tell people about all sorts of cool stuff. But there's a big difference between like sharing useful, helpful information, which is mostly what we do on this podcast, and even on our online trainings we've done on YouTube. Really sharing useful information. What's it take to actually be a professional trainer? Like, this is what you do for a living, day in and day out.
Yeah, so it is actually quite a process. So I found back when I was working in sales, primarily before I got into kind of the technical fields, that I love to talk, so that's perfect for a trainer. Check box number one there. Number two, I read more than anybody I know, so there's check box number two. To be a good technical trainer, and kind of pointing to what Caleb just said, it's always about having the most up-to-date information, being able to reference the most, and then the difference between somebody like yourselves, or somebody getting into the training realm, if you will, is a lot of times it's just trading knowledge that you've just recently read, and then kind of reverberating that, and saying, hey, this is what I read. Let me regurgitate to you and kind of feed you, the baby bird kind of thing. Whereas if you want to become a documented trainer, an approved trainer, and a certified trainer, not only do you have to be able to share this information and prove your aptitude in it, but you have to blow away the experts. So that's going to be the toughest part. So you really have to put on that hard hat and say, I have to outstudy everybody else here, so that when I go to this accreditation body or this, governing or approved type of organization, then I can show them that, hey, this is the material I'm covering. It's based in, your umbrella. So let me show you how I'm an expert, where I came from, the experience I've had, the real world experience I've had, the knowledge I've attained, and then let's collaborate to make sure this can be the best possible. So the courses that we developed, the 3 certificates you see above my head here for our 3 courses that I explained earlier, we began putting these together. I think I created these in like end of 2017, 2018. Okay. And then we had to work with the senior spec writers at API, meaning the people that have been doing this for, 30, 40, sometimes even 50 years, and have a bunch of tenure in there, have literally built these specs from the ground up. I had to work with them personally to, 1, show that I could actually prove my aptitude. 2, I understood a way to then pass along that knowledge without it becoming confusing. And then 3, like you pointed to, make sure I have the most up-to-date information. And that's how I got my accreditation. So it actually took us, it was roughly 22 months from the day I started working with the senior spec writers till they said, okay, you know what? We believe in you. You know your stuff. You can prove it right. It's accepted. People can accept the information and retain it. So we're going to now allow you to use our monograms and say that you can now accredit individuals to API. And so that was a huge step for us, but it was painstaking to get, let me tell you.
Really don't realize how big of a deal that is. Like, Caleb and I know from firsthand experience the hell it is to go through to get, not just your your basic Q1 management system in place, but then to get the monogram added onto it, like this is not a small undertaking for the business. And you did effectively the same thing on the services side, right? So we're always looking at on the product side. You did it all yourself on the service side. It's a huge freaking undertaking. And as far as I know, you're the only one that has gone through this hell successfully.
Yes. So we are the first and only API accredited thread inspection course in the world. So unless you have come to us to get your certified ID card, all you've done is just taken a different course.
Right. Now, okay, so this is the dumb question that everyone has to ask. Why should I pay for your accredited course when all of this information's online and heck, we probably got a whole handful of these students that have made brain dumps? Can't I learn this stuff otherwise? Why do I need your class?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great question. And we do get that quite a bit. In fact, many companies we go to, they tell me the exact same thing. Well, why should I get your, training? I go, well, you can become an API accredited inspector. And they go, okay, that's all well and good, but what is the true benefit to your training? And so the first and easiest answer is, Kyle, you're 100% correct. People could take the time to go out and read all these API specs, and they can actually request to be on a lot of these work groups that I'm on, which I meant to take a total count before I got here. It was getting really high, so I kind of gave up counting. So all these different work groups and committees and subcommittees, which again deal with the wording, the changing of the specs, the updating, what's gone in the past, what do we need to focus on in the future. So yes, you can do it on your own. One, most people either don't really have access to all the information, two, have access to it but don't want to pay for it, or three, don't want to actually dive all the way in there and then see, okay, what little nuggets did I want to take out of this? Because when you're reading an API spec, I'm reading 280 pages to then compile 5 or 6 points out of there that you're going to really care about. And so it's really about absorbing all that information and then being able to then teach that information. That's the trickiest part, is getting it and then being able to retain it all.
That is it. Oh my gosh. Yes.
One of the things that, come to mind and people think about trainers and teachers, and, there's the old saying, like, those who can't do teach, or something like that. But it's unrealistic.
It's not necessarily an insult either to teaching. Damn.
Well, and what I'm sitting there thinking of when you're explaining that is, like, there is no way that somebody could have a full-time regular job and do what you do, Connor. Like, that's got to be somebody's got to do that, and somebody's got to relate. Like, if you're not sourcing that out and you're not relying on an industry expert, to, I don't want to say think for you, but there's only so many hours in a day, so.
I see definitely similar to the benefit of a good auditor. Not the same, very, very similar. If you take a really good, experienced management system auditor, my gosh, this guy has been in 200 shops that do the same thing you do. Not to mention 500 of those shops do something totally freaking different. He has seen what works. He has seen what fails. He has seen what works in combination with things. I'm not suggesting go schmooze your auditor to get an easy audit. It doesn't work. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to take that auditor out for dinner just to say, man, you got to tell me about some of the cool stuff you've seen. He can tell you that. He's not allowed to consult, but he can tell you that in any case. So I see a good trainer here is kind of the same thing. It's like they are a absolute wealth of resources if you'll use them.
Yep, definitely. So yeah, that points to, that even brings it back to the point Caleb made earlier. So that's the combination that you're looking for. Somebody that has the real world experience, that has done it, has seen these real world scenarios when, the engineers or the people in the office go, well, this will work. And you get out there, you go, no, it will not. Like you have no idea. It's completely different world. It's day and night from designing this, putting it up together, understanding it in an office, and then practical application, dealing with the changes and the different things that are happening on the floor in the shop. I mean, it couldn't be more different. So thankfully, I was lucky enough to actually work for a gauge maker. And not only did I sell the gauges, but because of my electronical and mechanical aptitude from college and the military, I was able to build and calibrate a lot of these gauges, which is why I actually wanted to create these courses, was because it's tough to just read an operations manual and understand something to a component level. But if I give you the breakdowns and all this, that, and the other, you're not going to read that anyway. So now I need to find a way to get those points across to you without you going like, oh my God, what is this guy even talking about? And that's usually the toughest part for sure.
No, I mean, it's so true. Okay, so again, this is different scale, the same type of thing. I used to do, unfortunately, a lot of accident investigations. And I say, it's whatever, it's a whole other story. But I've done a lot of different accident investigations. So for one client right now, they wanted me to put together training for their accident investigation record keeping program. They're putting together a small safety team and like, fantastic, great. We were going in an awesome direction here. And so I'm putting together the PowerPoint for them because that's what they requested. I usually like to have an outline, but PowerPoints can be helpful to organize your thoughts. But then I'm sitting here and I'm going through it and I'm like, it's not a snowball's chance they can teach this to each other. I mean, there's not.
Yeah.
I started training because they want to do the training themselves. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how. I really don't know how to teach them to be a good trainer on it. Because I'm like, well, shit, if he's going to be a trainer on this, and I need like 2 days with this dude so that he can do a 30-minute training. And, they don't have the time available for someone to do that. So I'm just really scratching my head. Like, if this is going to be meaningful and impactful for them, they have to have someone that understands it.
Yeah, that's a great point. So when we first started with Gauge Training and we started training, we got our accreditation April 5th of 2019 from API. And then we kind of hit the ground running, right? And again, at first, it was slow going because, again, is it mandatory? Oh, it's not mandatory. Then why do we need to do it? And it's like, oh, well, we have an in-house training program, so we know our stuff pretty well. And it's like, don't get me wrong, in-house training is great. And obviously, anybody that I accredit and train, I expect them to, and I hope them that they go back and they try to help their fellow employees, right?
Yeah.
But to that point that you just made was when we first started training, a lot of companies had that same idea. They go, you know what? Let's send our quality manager who's been here for, been in the industry 30 years. He's been doing this for 18 years. We're going to send him and their top 2 inspectors that have been doing this for 10 years. They're going to take this course. We'll get them accredited. That's awesome. And then they can definitely go teach our guys because they've been doing this, for 15, 18 years. And obviously, as you kind of heard, I started Engage Maker in 2016, 2015 into 2015. So I've only really been doing this for about 8 years, not anywhere near the longevity of some of these people in here.
Right.
But again, thankfully, with my attention to detail and my persistence of learning, I'm very confident I can pass anybody.
In the right space, and you can do good.
Yeah. So that's what we did. We said, you know what? Do that. Send me your top 5 quality guys. The guys that are your experts that are training all your people. Send them to my class, right? And then when they come and take my course, and then they leave, and I go, "Do you think you could teach this course?" And they go, "There's not a chance in hell I could teach this course." And they're like, "You just completely changed the way I thought about this, and I've been doing this again for 20-something years, And so then they go back to their team and they go, "We need to have everybody in here because sure, I can get some of the nuances and I can help with some of the techniques here, but the way that and I'm not trying to boast about myself, but the way that I'm able to explain something or break it down to one, give you all this information that you didn't realize you needed, but then 2, give it in a way that you can easily absorb and then put it into practice." That's always the biggest disconnect with in-house training and then getting like the approved or certified or regimented training by a governing body. It's because I've had to go through 70 steps to get this accreditation. Whereas, hey, you're an expert. You've been doing this 20 years. Can you type up us, something real quick? Sweet. Let's train our people. It's like how much effort, how much time, how much actual information really went in it.
And I mean, this is kind of sounds like a little bit of a BS argument, but this really is what the risk-based thinking clause in the ISO 9001 standard is meant for. Because someone has to look at their business operation and they have to make a judgment call. Do we have the necessary competence, skills, and organizational knowledge within our company to then train others to work satisfactorily? Do we need to go get that additional information for one of our guys to be the local expert, or do we just need an external expert? But you have to make that decision. And this is what risk-based thinking actually is versus all the other bullcrap that people do.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So about accredited trainings, this was something that I had looked into years ago. When we were first getting Texas quality assurance going, one of the things I wanted to do is auditor trainings. And so we went through the process to get accredited through Global Exemplar, and ultimately decided not to do it because there's so many other folks out there doing it. I didn't see how we could necessarily be competitive in that market. It's not something we wanted to do full time, but it was also because it's an enormous amount of work to develop the materials, make certain that they are reviewed, vetted, so on and so forth. And it's an enormous amount of cost. And I just said, not worth it. So the fact that you've done this, again, hats off to you. It's so freaking cool.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you're right. It was a huge process. And honestly, if I wouldn't have created this from scratch, from the ground up, I probably would have had the same end result that you did, where I said, you know what, maybe we don't need to get this. But knowing that it was new and it was here to shape the industry, I couldn't just go around saying, hey, we're gauge training, we're going to train you on how to do all this. And they're like, who is this guy? You know? And instead, I needed somebody to give me a little bit more legitimacy, somebody to back me. So when I go, well, I'm backed by APIU, everybody in the world goes, oh, I know who API is. Okay. Yeah. All right. What did you have to say again? And now all of a sudden that door opens a little wider for me.
Exactly. Well, this is a little bit of a different topic. It might be its own episode on its own, but we can probably chat here for a few minutes. I love to kind of pay attention to how things seem to go in cycles, right? Not turn this to a big political conversation, but it was always freaked out. The world's ending. It's like, you just go back 40 years, world was ending. Go back 40 years, world legitimately was ending. I mean, so by any case, everything tends to flow in various cycles. And my perception is that here for a long time, kind of really the last, I guess, 15, 20 years, kind of when you and I got tossed, all three of us got tossed into the real world. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a big focus was like, the internet's there. All the information is there. The world's information is at your fingertips. Just go learn it. And that worked really well for a select few of us, I think. And the rest of us were really confused. And so I feel like now we're back where it seems the world used to be, where we have a lot of local experts for niche areas because people can't afford to have their own local expert in-house. I kind of feel we're shifting back into that. I don't know. Do y'all get that same vibe? Do you see the same?
I do. I do. And that's even, I've noticed that when I go train people and stuff too at certain companies, again, without naming names and stuff, sometimes they're even larger companies and it may just specifically one facility, but I'll go in to do the training. And when we're in the class, I'm asking about, hey, what do you guys do? Have you read the spec? Are you guys in our work groups? Do you guys know this? Have you seen this come out? Blah, 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 blah. And there's a lot of times there's always one guy that's in the class. It's like, oh yeah, I'm the guy that does that. I'm the guy that reads all the spec. I do this, I do that. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll ask about setting up the gauges, zeroing the gauges, stuff like that. He's like, I do that. I do it in the quality lab. I zero it and I do all this for them. And they go measure. And I'm in my head like, why? I mean, you're taking actually value away from your other employees by only being the expert in your company. Yeah. Now it's different. If it's your company, you need to be expert. You're the one training like myself. That's different. But when you're in a company environment, only having one guy that's at the top of his game, like the old adage is you're only, as weak as you're as strong as your weakest link. Right. So it's like, if one of those guys is not doing stuff right, are you going to have your number one guy watch everybody do this? Are you going to have him check everybody's inspection and every report? The guy's going to lose his mind, He's not even going to have time to go to the bathroom, So it's like...
And the internal expert has to be capable of training others. Well, I'm Caleb, so you can probably share a little bit here. Caleb's done absolute freaking fantastic job putting together a help guide, start guide for our software. I mean, seriously, it is written in the most simple, broken down Barney style English you can get without being insulting, right? I mean,
that's my natural language.
Yeah,
right. In the Air Force, we said dumb it down so even an Army guy can understand.
Whoops, sorry to hang here.
No offense to the Army, they're obviously my brother in arms here. My dad was 82nd Airborne. He's looking over at me right now, like, what did you just say about the Army?
But so he's got this fantastic start guide, right? Super simple. It walks you through everything. Very simple videos. It's like, again, this is kind of where he's kind of got a gift on it. I may take 10 minutes to make the video. Clearly, I talk too much sometimes. He'll do it in 30 seconds. I'm like, shit, dude, that's better than anything I could have done. All right, cool. But Caleb, how many times do you have to still spend training people? Because they
All
can't
of the
do it
time.
on they can't do it on their own. They have to have someone go.
No. I mean, so for our site, you want to put the information out and you want to get information out for people to find if they're the type of person that just wants to go find it on their own and, get on-demand training. But yeah, there's something to be said with people being able to ask questions or,
Yeah.
people being able to be like, hey, yeah, I know that already. Can we move on to, and Connor, you've probably seen this, if you're in a classroom and let's say you have something on your agenda and everybody seems to be already familiar with it, you may not necessarily have to spend all that much time on it.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
The more
Yeah.
demand.
So much body language and voice tone communicates that you lose. But,
yeah, and that's a big part of being a trainer too, is being able to recognize that. So that's great that Caleb brings up that point, because a lot of times inexperienced trainers are, again, people that are just regurgitating information as opposed to like using their knowledge to imprint it on somebody. Is they don't pay attention to those body factors, or they see somebody kind of looking around, they think, well, this guy doesn't get it or whatever. It's like, no, he may understand it completely, but you also need to hook that person in, right? You need to make them engaged in the material. And that's a tricky thing to do.
Well, we we moved up to the country, 2 years now. Wow, it still feels new, but it's been 2 years. Holy crap!
Yeah, dang.
But we moved out here 2 years ago, and seriously, we have done 10 years worth of work in 2 years. Like, I go home, I spend time with the kids, I eat dinner, I go up to my shop, and I work till 9 or 10 o'clock and crap outside a lot of nights. I love it though. I'm not complaining, right? But Jesse was like, man, Dad, we should do like a ton of little how-to videos, He's like, man, there's like everything we do around here you got to figure out. It's kind of a cool solution. I'm like, yeah, we probably could. And but it's the point is, because there's just so many things that have to get done, and he kind of wants it to. He just thinks it's cool how we figure out stuff and fix it all the time. And really, that's the value of a good trainer, because they have gone through all of that hell already, and you're not doing the figuring it out stuff. My boy thinks it's fun to figure this stuff out and watch Daddy get pissed off and throw things. But a good trainer has already been through that hell, and now you don't have to.
Right. And they're still, even though they don't want to do it anymore, they're still willing to put themselves in those situations to continue to learn that as well.
Yep.
And that's something I've seen with some trainers too. They get to a point where they're proficient in like teaching a course, and I know this course like the back of my hand. Well, it's like, no, the slides like the back of your hand. Because if you're not continuing your own improvement and continuing to look further down the telescope, as it were, then all you're doing is just reading a PowerPoint. And let's be honest, almost anybody can do that. Yeah. It's how are you getting this information across? Can I feel it in your voice that, one, it, and two, you're confident in yourself, and three, you want me to learn it? And that's a huge disconnect I see with a lot of trainers and people that I've tried to train. So you kind of pointed to that earlier. We only have 3 approved trainers in the world that are allowed to teach my courses. We have me. We have actually Robert Mims, who was on the podcast with us before. I know he's done a couple with you guys. And then we have Stephen Loomis, who's actually an old family friend that used to work for Hydro and U.S. Steel for a long time in premium, semi-premium connections. And so he helped us develop this as well. And he's got the hands-on knowledge, being on the rigs, being in the shops, all that as well. So all I had to do is refine his personality a little bit to put him in a classroom, which sometimes can be a challenge in itself, but it just, to do that, like when I look to hire some trainers here in the future, like it's going to be, you're going to come work for me, but you're not going to be a trainer for at least probably a year. And that's given, even if you already have a wealth of knowledge with you, because I need to hone you in and basically almost make you better than me before I trust you to go out there. And
I have found the exact same thing is true with auditors. Thank God we've got Dawn with us. She's our lead auditor, especially if it's a top job. My gosh, she's on it every single time. And I have tried to find a few other auditors, and I have just not been, as thrilled with anyone else. And I think a big part of it is that is really what we need to do. Is like whoever the next auditor is, and they'd be like, Dawn, my apologies, you're going to have a shadow for the next 6 months.
Yes, exactly.
Because I really don't care how good of an auditor you are. I want you to audit our way. And I don't mean that as cocky or arrogant. It's just we do a damn good job, and you need to do it our way.
Yeah, I do that all the time where I go train somebody and I'll show them something. They go, oh, you do it that way? Well, I do it this way. And I go, okay, so you do it incorrectly. Good to know. So let's go ahead and fix that technique. And here's why it's incorrect. But being able to have that knowledge like Dawn would and say, no, you can't do it this way because X, Y, Z, as opposed to like, well, don't do it that way. Well, that's not a good reason not to do it. But if you can explain to me why it's a bad reason, then I go, oh, okay, well, now it makes sense. I was doing this because it was easier or because it was quicker or because everyone wants to find the shortcut. Everybody wants to find the shortest path to get their job done. Whereas we all know in our world, it's all about attention to detail. So if you're taking shortcuts, if you're trying to find a quicker way to do it, odds are is you're glossing over some what you think might be a minor detail, but could lead to a very crucial point or a crucial part of an inspection that, oh man, that's why this failed. Oh geez, and that's something so simple, but we just glossed over it because we didn't think so. So putting importance and relevance on the right sections is really tough as well.
Well, it is, and that's where experience has to come into play. Because truthfully, every single line, again, I'm thinking because most of the trainings I've had to develop from scratch in safety trainings. But I think like, man, you go to one of these OSHA CFRs, and we are hundreds of lines long. It will take me longer, by far longer, to read the standard word for word than to train you on it thoroughly. And so then it's like, how do I communicate a greater volume of more clear, concise, easy to understand information in fewer words? And no one ever thinks about training that way. It's kind of like we've all heard really bad songs. We're like, man, I think they had a first grader write that. It rhymed and it had a beat, but man, it's bad. Like, what were they even talking about? And you hear other songs, and it's like you listen to it, and every time you listen to it, you hear something you didn't hear before. You hear something you didn't hear before. My gosh, you packed 4 hours worth of content to a 3-minute song. You can do the same thing with this content. We can do the same thing with our process procedures. I mean, it's the same across the board, and it takes a certain skill set to be good at it. So last question I got here before we close up. When would you argue that someone should create an in-house training versus find an authorized trainer? When would it be smart to build those in-house? Because no one's going to do all of, well, I'll say that. Most companies won't do all of their training externally. They want to do some internally, and there's lots of good reasons for it. But how do you, kind of where we started, how do you make that decision? Why one, why the other?
Yeah, so I'm actually a big fan of you need both. So I just having approved accredited training, again, you can have some great trainers. I've met some great trainers. I've been trained by some great people, but sometimes they can also get too locked into their own realm or their own way of thought. And that can be detrimental to the student, because sometimes the student will have questions, or they'll, well, I saw this happen, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, that shouldn't happen. You're like, okay, but why did it happen? Or how can I prevent it from happening? They're like, well, just do this the right way. And you're like, okay, you didn't answer my question. So it's good to have a mixture, but you want to create an in-house as soon as you have enough people, and also don't put it all on 1 or 2 people's shoulders as well. You need to have a team. And also across different sections, like you need somebody from your engineering to have cross training on the practical application using a CNC machine, understanding the program, understanding what can happen with all the threads and the threading process and all this stuff. Because again, if you don't physically see it, what I design here, practically, mathematically, it should make sense. But as again, we pointed to earlier, when you go out in the field, nothing's practical anymore. Nothing it fits how it's supposed to. It's all going to be crazy.
Always a fight with a couple of our newer engineers. Man, they draw up something for us machine. I'm like, no one's hands fitting in there.
Yeah, there's no chance, right? So going back to your question. So I think you should try to implement an in-house training as quick as you can. But what you need to do is get a core group of people that, one, already have some practical knowledge, already have some experience in the industry or in the section of which you're going to train them on. 2, make sure they actually want to learn. Okay, that's a big thing too. I've met a lot of people that, don't get me wrong, were very smart, had a lot of practical knowledge, had a lot of experience. But then when you try to transition them to that, they go, well, my bar has been hit. I know all this already, so I just need to tell people this. No, you need to be 10 steps ahead of the person that's going to ask you that question. Because if you're not, then, and you can't answer the question, I lose confidence in you, right?
Yep.
And then how valuable is your training? How much am I really learning? Am I going to mentally check out? You know, it starts going down a bad path. So
And then the next
I would
guy
say
doesn't ask the question either because you didn't know.
yeah, exactly. And, you know, if I had a question that was on top of your question, well, I'm not going to ask that question anymore because I didn't even get the root answer already. So now it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to go ask somebody else, or I'll have to figure this out online, or whatever the case may be, which is great. There's lots of forums out there and I love chats. I personally go on a lot of chat forums, especially in regards to threading, inspection, metrology, and I will comment on there because unfortunately there's a lot of incorrect information or outdated information in there as well. Because again, people think that you cap yourself at learning. You can only retain so much knowledge, which I do not believe in the slightest, not even close. So again, creating an in-house training program is great, but you need something to structure it off of as well. So you need to say, hey, we got this style training and they gave us this reference. So let's try to use this to our advantage. How does this apply to us? How can we make this work in our scenario? But then the whole purpose of the in-person training, or I'm sorry, the in-house training is not to have this be the level of our standard. This is the minimum level of our standard. So this is what we know we can pass along, but while we still do this in-house training and you go through and, Caleb had the Kyle course, we're still going to send Caleb out to get the Connor course because we need another avenue to get this information in there because people teach differently. People respond differently to different criteria, different personnel, or the way they act. So again, that's why I point back to the importance of having both. Sure, I want in-house training. Will it ever replace me? No, it won't. It can't, right? There's no way that you're going to have anybody that, one, has the time, or two, most likely doesn't have the drive to get to the level we're going to take this. But if you have somebody that can retain that information, can get across those key points that can essentially keep you at that minimum base knowledge level, then you continue to send them out for that external approved, accredited, certified training. It lifts everything, right? So they say the tide raises all boats, right? And so that's what you want to do. You just want your in-house trainer to always be a little bit higher. You want him to be the lighthouse, but you need everybody else to be in a functioning boat, not just sitting at the dock, right? Yep. So you need that mixture of both to continue to increase your bottom line while still being able to rely on the experts for that top-end training. Because at the end of the day, you're just not going to have the resources, the time, or the personnel to get to that level. Take advantage of the people that have put in the time and effort, and that's their whole being. This is the whole company, is to standardize this thread inspection training across the entire world to the point where we're going in the spec. Like it's going to become a requirement. So it's like, all right, let's get this approved, certified, accredited training, and let's continue to modify our in-house training so that as we do bring in new employees, we can get them to the base level so that when we do go send them out for this more intense accredited training, they're not, the deer in the headlights going, oh my God. They come in going, okay, well, I understood this, but I didn't realize how important this part of it was. And that's when, again, you start making all those connections, and that's how you continue to grow and become more proficient.
That's how it was when I did a CCNA class years, I don't know how many years ago. I dabbled with, some networking, but nothing like that.
Right. And a big thing too is also holding, right. One of the other things too I want to touch on was holding your accredited bodies or companies that you're getting the certified training to account as well. Okay, what is your plan for the next course? What else are you guys working on? How do you guys get this information to update your courses? Is it the same course I took 3 years ago? Also put that pressure on them, because while they may be an expert, like I pointed to earlier, if they're not continuing to push themselves as well, these specs are changing every day. I'm on like 30 work groups and committees and subcommittees. I live in Zoom meetings and Microsoft Team meetings all hours of the day, all the time. But I need to. This is my lifeblood. If somebody's going to call me out on something, I need to be like, well, here's how I know the answer. And then bam, 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 bam. Here's all the people you can check with, or here's all the material you can reference if you want to do your own homework, and then try and challenge me on it. Bring it on.
That has been one of the most useful and beneficial things for me as I get further into this world. Is it is so freaking cliche, but it's so true, is you never know the people you're going to meet and the connections that are valuable. Like I look back and I'm like, holy crap, man, that was like such weird little happenstance that I met this guy. But man, everything changed from it. And it hasn't happened just once. It's happened several times over. And so, yeah, you just never really know who you're going to meet. Now, I won't say that going to these networking events with the intent of, I'm going to find the next super useful, helpful guy in my life. No, it's just, you just go do stuff. You be a good person. You be open to things, but you don't get that opportunity otherwise. So
couldn't agree more. Yeah, I love the networking opportunities. I go to all of the API ones, all of the AADE, American Associated Drilling Engineers, the IADC, as well as the SPE. I mean, I go to any and all of them because, just like you said, you never know.
Is never going to look at any of this stuff. He's never going to talk to any of these folks. He's never going to know any of this stuff. He's going to do his job. He's probably going to do it pretty well. But man, if he could up it just 2 or 3 notches higher, the difference between successful and hyper successful, it's not a huge difference. It's a little bit of luck and discipline that the rest of us don't have in it. I just love the stuff that you do. Again, I am just blown away that you have gone through and done what you've done with the accreditation process for this training. So cool. So real quick, because we're already over about 5 minutes here, but it's fine. Who is truly an ideal student for you, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, gaugetraining.com, and it'll be GAUGE, trainingstandardspelling.com there. You can obviously email our sales as well. Our phone number, 281-895-6632. And please reach out. So we like to train anybody and everybody that has anything to do with inspection. So clearly we're mainly oil field based, lots of machinists, QC personnel, third-party inspectors, auditors, things like this. But we do branch into the car industry, car manufacturing, as well as aerospace as well. And that's when you get into some really intense stuff like clean rooms. And, we're measuring down to the craziest microns and stuff like that, which, again, is super fun. But yeah, also people that are just kind of interested in this. If you're in sales, that's one of the things I don't see enough in our courses is salesmen. And it blows my mind. Like, as a salesman, I wanted to know so much technical data that, one, I could go sell to a salesman. Of course, I can talk that lingo. We can have a beer. Yeah. Hey, here's my price. Oh, can you do better? No, I can't. Well, we need a discount to get it. Okay, here's 5%. That's the easy part. But then being able to go to their quality team or their engineering team or whoever else and be able to explain that on another level and say, well, we can guarantee it because here, we got this type of training. We do this, we do that. This is how we do that. You go, oh, okay. So that's something I want to see more in, is like sales managers or have sales guys come in. Now, do you need to get, our ID card and become an API accredited inspector? Maybe not. But if you understand how these inspectors, machinists, and QC personnel are perceiving the pipe or perceiving the order, it changes your complete outlook, and it'll give you more ammunition to go sell it. Plus, if you are accredited or your team's accredited, that's going to be the first thing I tell you. Okay, so you can give us this pipe. Not only can I give you the pipe because I have a monogram and I pay my fees like everybody else, but I have API accredited inspectors, so I can prove that when we measure it, it's correct. So you don't have to send it back. Now, if I'm a salesman and I go, I don't have to send this back to you. You can guarantee it's going to be good every time it comes. Where do I sign? Let's go.
Yep. Man, well, it has been great. Caleb, you got anything before we wrap up here?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Awesome, man. Connor, I appreciate your time here. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And hopefully we can get a few more folks sent your way here. So, man, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Really appreciate it, man. I'm happy to help you guys anyway as well. You're a great team. You guys are vast, sense of knowledge as well. So I would like to promote you guys too, but I look forward to the next podcast, guys.
Awesome. Take care, guys. All right. Well, thank you very much for chiming in and joining with us here today. So this is cool stuff. I mean, it really is. I mean, we talk about training and thread inspections, and I guess those on the service level aren't all that interesting. But man, really the depth of knowledge and information that's available here it's necessary on a daily basis. Like, this is what keeps our world and our society and our industries all functioning, is how people do and accomplish these jobs and these tasks. And so I just find it fascinating. It's my absolute favorite part of my job, is just seeing all the cool ways that people do stuff. Again, kind of like talking about with me and my boy doing all these little random projects on the weekends. Like, we love figuring out how to do it, how to make it work. And I just think it's so cool to see folks that have found such amazing, innovative ways, or sometimes so freaking dirt simple I never would have thought about it. So if you love this stuff too, you like the podcast, you like what we do, definitely be sure to subscribe. It truly does a lot to help us. There's all the crap of the algorithms, but just getting those subscriptions, the view counts up, it is huge to help us. So please be sure to like, share, subscribe. And if you have any questions, anything quality related, give us a call. I never charge for a phone call. Give me a call. Love to talk to you soon. Y'all take care. All right. Thank you guys.
Man, that was awesome.
We were going to talk about the Q1 transition, and I forgot all about to bring that up. But
I even made a note and I didn't bring it up.
But man, it goes right along though with everything you're talking about, like staying up to date on all of the trainings. It's the same thing here. These standards update. Now, granted, they don't update nearly as frequently as the specs. Well, they may actually update with some of the frequency. You just got a lot more specs you have to worry about than standards we have to worry about. We've got very few standards comparatively speaking. I go look at the monogram list. I'm like, oh crap. What do we learn?
It gets long.
I think we're still
sure.
well.
But no, API did the update to the Q1, which is effectively their equivalent to the ISO 9001 standard. And everyone has until September this year to get up to date with Q1. That's it. After September this year, if you're not up to date with the 10th edition, then you're out of luck. But it's really cool what they've done, though. I mean, usually I kind of complain a lot when the standards are updated, but I like what they did with the Q1. I really can't complain with the update here. They added just enough of the ISO language that Q1 covers all the ISO requirements, plus more. I mean, I've always said that there's the to a Venn diagram, it's a pretty close overlap, but man, Q1's just fully encapsulated 9001 for oil and gas production at least.
Right.
But yeah, so we're going to be putting together a few things there for A1 API Q1 transition. So it'll be fun. We'll see what happens.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Well, I will chat with you again soon.
Oh, hey, real quick question, actually. I love the little intro and outro